Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Barrows of Make It Happen Monday. Hopefully you all had a fantastic weekend. I am here with a very interesting guest that I've actually been working with for quite a while on the startup of his company and what he's building out here. And it's a very topical topic that we're going to talk about just for me personally, and it's going to be about coaching. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Tom Lavery from Jiminny. Tom, you want to say hi to everybody and give them a little background of where you're coming from, what you're all about?
Hey John, thanks for the intro, man. It's awesome to be here. Jiminny was founded by me and the team about 2 years ago. We've been live about 18 months. So my background is I'm a former SVP of sales for a tech company. Grew that over nearly a 10-year period. Did a heap of things right, heap of things wrong. We sold it twice in that time.
You sold it twice?
Yeah, well, 2 private equity management buyouts. So yeah. We opened up in different countries, did all sorts of things. So it was an amazing journey. We learned so much. And along the way, the hardest thing in any business, which is the lifeblood of it, is sales, right? And I looked after sales and marketing. And we just saw a massive opportunity to help sales and customer success be better at what they do. And that's really how Jiminny was born. Well, it's why it's turned into what it is, which is at its core is a communications platform, which enables the whole business to coach and collaborate better.
Love it. And I think that we're going to dive into that. I did want to back up because I was actually on a podcast yesterday. I think it was Seamless and with Brandon, and he was actually asking me my history, and we went through, and he's like, hey, what's the biggest learning lesson, right? And I had a company we sold to Staples, and I told him my biggest learning. What was it? You said you learned a lot with that previous company, right?
Yeah.
What were some of like the biggest shit, man, like learning lessons from that experience, going PE twice, those type of things? I'm just curious myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's business stuff that we learn, and there's personal stuff that you go through. I think for me, those transitions of a business where you're changing, it's almost like if I look at it over an 8-year period, it's almost like 3 different chapters to the career that we progress through. But for me, adapting to that change, when you're acting like as so think about some of your audience and your listeners who are aspiring SDRs or AEs, and you make that transition from being a seller to a manager, a player coach to a manager, letting your team fail and not kind of jumping in. And I think we'll talk a lot about that in kind of different ways of coaching and today, and kind of chew the fat on that. But for me, it was definitely that adapting and changing my role. Sometimes I did it too late, and I learned less hard lessons from it and fell hard. Other times I did it well. But yeah, for me, that changing of my role, that's how you evolve in a startup. That's how you stay there. Otherwise you can't stay the course, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the things I realized is once you know where you fit, it's an interesting journey, right? Because some people are brilliant from 0 to 5 or 6 million, right? Because they're the pure chaos. I'll start anything, huge risk profile, you know what I mean? All in. So like 0 to 10 million, give or take, right? And then there's 10 million to 50 million. And it's a different skill set to take a company from 10 to 50. And then 50 to IPO or acquisition or something, that's another. And then after that, that's another. So it's like once you figure out where you fit, it's actually quite liberating, because then you start looking for companies where you're really good at this space at this stage of a company, and you don't try to force it. What I learned was there was definitely, we had to force out a few people, and I had to be forced out. Like when we got acquired by Staples, I thought I was the guy because I had brought the company to that level. And so great, now it's my turn to help integrate into this multi-billion-dollar organization. And I was not the guy, you know what I mean? They ended up firing me. And I was shocked, right? Because I was like, what the fuck are you going to fire me for? Like, I'm the one who built this company, for crying out loud. But like, I just couldn't play the corporate game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a filter. I don't know how to play politics. So I was not the guy for that next stage of that business. And so it's an interesting journey as you jump into it, right?
Yeah. As you look for jobs and people look for different careers now, that culture fit is so important. You spend 80% of your time at work, and how even the style of the sales team, how you're going to be trained, how you're going to coach, the methodology of the way that they even sell their product, is really something to consider when you're, an SDR or an AE looking for your next role. Yeah. That kind of thing can come first, a lot of the time.
Definitely. So let's talk about coaching, because this is a challenge for me, and this is why I was looking forward to this conversation, because I've always said if my only job was to manage, I love managing when it's my only job, right? But you add on being a business owner, selling, my own quota, player coach, that type of stuff. And I'm not great. I'll admit it. I know where my strengths and weaknesses are. My coaching mentality, or my management mentality when I'm in this mode, growing a business and doing everything, is keep up. You know what I mean? It's literally like, hey, I'm here for you, but you need to come to me when you have issues, right? And I'm open to it, but keep up, pay attention. And if you can keep up, pay attention, you're going to learn a shitload along the way. But as far as me taking a step back and doing like actual real coaching, I'm really not that good at it, because it's hard for me to fit it into my schedule, at least the way I think of things, right? I mean, one of the challenges, for instance, with call recordings and everything else is, every half hour that there's a call recording that I need to listen to so I can give feedback on that is a half an hour that I have to take away from my day, which is focused on selling clients, managing accounts, prepping for trainings, and those type of things. So can we talk, let's talk about, first of all, what's your philosophy these days? We talked briefly before we jumped on here about kind of the modern coaching, like the old school mentality of managing and coaching versus the modern way of managing and coaching. Could you kind of set the stage with that, and then let's dive into some practical stuff about, maybe to help me out a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I think there's lots of interesting points there. I think, first of all, if you talk about, like, I've been the old school way, right? So I'm going to show my age now. I'm in my mid-30s, and I started selling like you when I was very young. And, when I was first learning to be a sales manager, it's kind of like, well, this is the way we sell, and you expect the team to kind of fall in line and follow the way you sell, all with good intentions, right? But I think, the modern way as a really good sales leader is that you haven't got all the answers, and that you don't know everything. And how can the rest of the team help, to coach? So, for example, it's kind of changing the mentality of who is the coach. And it kind of leads into kind of how we see customers today really engage with kind of peer-to-peer coaching to achieve the best results, right? So if you've got a senior AE and they're awesome at doing that one thing in the sales process, they're probably the best person to coach this new rep on X, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just how those things happen across the business. But yeah, my philosophy is being an open leader, knowing that you kind of haven't got all the answers, and letting the team support and coach each other.
I think that leads to the culture piece of this too, because how do you incentivize, those individual contributors, the SDR, the AE, who are great in those areas, mm-hmm. who are usually excelling in those areas because they are focused and they are good at what they do, right? And now you're asking them, how do you, hey, I need your help coaching the rest of the team on what you're really good at. Is that a pure culture thing? Do you kind of set the stage early on in your organization? Hey, everybody's all in on this stuff, and this is what my expectations are of you. Or do you have to put together incentive plans or structure or something to help say to those people, look, I'm adding some additional responsibility to your plate that you might not get comped for, but it's for the betterment of the team. Like, how do you get people to do that?
Yeah, well, there's loads of different ways, right? In terms of how you can coach, whether it's in the moment, whether it's after the event, whether it's in a team session, whether it's like self-coaching comes first. So if you were talking earlier where you haven't got bags of time, setting a simple KPI to listen to your own conversation and then bring back to the table what you've learned, and then you can be more constructive with it, right? But yeah. I think in terms of like millennials, it's been proven time and time again, they want to share. I'm a millennial, people want feedback. They want to be told these things. So I think, at the end of the day, the old school way would be, a new person starts, they're going to sit next to you for 2 weeks and just watch you do your job, and wait for those kind of golden moments to happen, which inevitably don't, right? So I think it's all how you spin it to the team, right? These things are all time consuming for everyone in terms of like training, but it's all how you fundamentally piece it together to get the best result. Everyone's pushing towards the same goal in a team, right? Whether you were talking about your numbers earlier, right? Everyone wants to hit that goal of what they want to achieve. And it's just about building that winning mentality across the business. So they want to help each other. And that's where you see the best success. Like when we look at our customers, people do it in different ways, right? But the ones that are really successful and grow faster are the ones that aren't just all about individual contributors thinking I'm the sales king. It's about the ones that are thinking it's a team sport ultimately.
Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately that's how teams win, right? I mean, you know, everybody looks at sales as an individual sport because you got your quota and that type of thing. But the best sales reps I've ever come across, yeah, they make sure that they hit their targets, but then as soon as they do, they carve out time to help everybody else rise the tide, right? And so, but with that, like, say you're a rep out there that doesn't have a culture like that. You know what I mean? Like, you're working at a company right now. It's not a coaching. It's not a all hands on deck. We're all helping each other out here. And you want coaching, like you need coaching. You mentioned earlier about self-coaching. Mm-hmm. I think one of the most powerful things any of us can do is record ourselves doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, if you like, I took presentation skills training. This was embarrassing. Mm-hmm. So I had been doing this Basho training. You know, I'd worked for Basho, and then we split off and we started Kensei Partners. And I remember, you know, my training for how to deliver training was follow me, like watch me, mm-hmm. right? So I watched one of the senior trainers. I took my notes, right, and I kind of regurgitated what they said, and then I found my style and whatever. But I never took presentation skills training, right? So to learn how to actually present. So I was like, you know what, maybe like 5 years into my career as a trainer, I said, maybe I should go take some presentation skills training. And I took this presentation skills training, and what they do is, I don't know if you've ever taken it, but they record you, right? So you stand up, right? And they record you, and then they bring you back into a room and they show you what, you know, and then they kind of give you some tips about what, and when I tell you that the guy, when he brought me back into that room, he didn't have to say a damn thing. As soon as I looked at myself on video, I was like, holy shit. Like, have I been doing that for the past 5 years? Like, I didn't even, so that's self-correcting. And I recommend to reps all the time, like, leave yourself a voicemail, record your voicemail, listen to it. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be the best way that you can improve yourself. So what are some ideas that you have for reps to either seek out coaching from other people in a respectful way, understanding, hey, everybody's time is valuable here, but also do some self-coaching? Like, what are some ideas around that we can help improve ourselves in case we don't have a company that's really invested in that?
Yeah, I think there's you see it all the time. Like, we're in certain circles where you might think that everyone records every conversation and that people would do coaching all the time, which is not true at all. So that kind of first step in terms of people thinking, you know, it's not Big Brother, all right, or it's not like, oh my God, I'm just being you know, watched by my manager, and that again comes down to the kind of top down thing. But I think if you're looking at the individual person, there are tools you can just use yourself to, like, record your app on a phone, record your own call, record your own conversation. But yeah, self-coaching is the first step, right? If you listen back to your own conversation, you're going to be able to dissect it, right? And it's focusing on those one things. You're like, if you're a tennis player or you're a football player or anything, you're going to watch your serve back. You watch how you do that, right? So I would just pick one thing to start, right? Everyone. Yeah, you were talking about it the other day. I listened to a couple of your podcasts before, right? And everyone knows the sale is won or lost in that first call. That's a very obvious thing. It doesn't, you know, so many opportunities going in pipeline. So that discovery call is where you win or lose the deal, or discovery demo, or whatever you want to call it. So, you know, start with one part of your sales, whether it's a cold call if you're outbound, and just focus on listening to that bit and getting that bit nailed. But that would be my advice. Just don't try and spread yourself too thin. Just focus on one thing to coach to start.
Yeah, I used to tell people, you know, this is what I did. I'd pick one thing a month that I was trying to improve about myself. And it could have been small. Like, you know, I went to Toastmasters once, and what they do is they record you, right? It's public speaking. They record you, and then, you know, people give you feedback, and somebody in the back of the room counts your filler words, right? How many times you said throughout those type of things. And you never know how bad your filler words are until somebody actually points them out to you. But then once somebody points them out to you, that's all you can hear, for crying out loud. So when I was highlighted, you know, for instance, and I tell everybody this, I'm on a crusade still to get these two phrases out of the vocabulary of sales professionals, which is touching base and checking in, right? But for a month, all I did was I literally took sticky notes. I put them up on my cube and those type of, I told everybody around me, if you ever hear me say touching base and checking in, I want you to smack me. And so that was a focal point for the month of getting that out of my vocabulary and replacing it with something else. And then the next month I would pick something else. So I think to your point, it's almost like you have to look at, first of all, what's your job, right? Like what, are you an SDR? Are you an AE? Are you a manager? And then saying, okay, well, what are all the areas that I do need coaching on, and then prioritize them out to say, okay, for instance, an SDR, it's like, I'm good at making calls. I'm good in that activity, but I don't do a lot of prep for my calls. So maybe I'll prep a little bit better. Or gatekeepers, I suck at getting through gatekeepers, or that initial intro call and tying into, like, those are the sections to your point. How do I improve on that? And then how do you know what to look for though, right? If you're self-coaching, how do you know that your call sucked versus it was decent? One of the things I'm looking at right now, with Morgan, for instance, I listen to his calls and they're good. You know what I mean? I listen to them in general. And if you didn't really listen in, like, you wouldn't be able to pick up, like, if you didn't have a lot of experience, right? Like, we've been in sales for 20 years. Either one of us can listen to a call and yeah, it's a good call, but there's something missing, right? So I can kind of pick that out. But how does an inexperienced rep understand where they really do need coaching, or what does good look like, as it relates to what they do?
Yeah, I think you could probably definitely have happy ears when you listen to a recording or in real time, right?
Yeah.
But I think in hindsight, when you're selling or you're talking or you're in the moment, you're trying to listen, you're trying to think about the next thing to say. So it's always going to be slowed down, like almost like slow motion, right? And again, oh God, like you say, we did it 15 years. I'm sure when I'm pitching, there's still that you never get the finished article, right? It's never perfect. So I think that I wouldn't worry about the 1,000 things that are in the call that are probably not right or wrong. As long as you pick up on that one thing that probably, or is quite glaringly obvious, in your kind of call, whether it's like, oh, I'm using this negative language to introduce this, or I'm doing that. I think if they can just spot one thing, then it's a start, right? Because that's self-coaching. It is down to them. But then it's like how they involve their manager. Say, oh, if their manager's short on time, it's like, oh, I listened back to my call and I think there's this one part that you'll find interesting. Can you listen to this 5 minutes and tell me if you think, this is right? So you might be asking for a tiny bit of their time and then pull it back. That's obviously if the culture's different and they're not coaching already.
Well, I mean, I think that's actually a pretty good point for people listening here. I always tell people, look, I was a manager of 6 or 7 reps, and it's not easy as a manager to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your 7, 10, however many reps are reporting to you, and identify where they need help. So inevitably what happens from a management standpoint is we take a little bit more of a broad brush approach to everybody, saying, hey, you know what, here's how we need to run qualification calls. We're not doing good on qualification calls. So, right, let's try this as a group. Individually though, it's like, how do I know this person? So if a rep, and I tell this to reps all the time, if you want to go to the top of your manager's list as far as like favorites, if you will, proactively ask for coaching. Right? Because it's actually something managers want to do, but like a lot of times because managers don't have a lot of time to do it and there's very limited structure on how they do it, when it comes to I know I got to coach my team, now, or I know I got to coach Tom here. All right. All right. Now I got to think about what do I got to coach Tom on? You know what I mean? And where is he struggling? And, let me think through some of the conversations I've had with him. But if you come to me and say, hey, John, I've been listening to my calls and this is what's going on, and I need some help here. Could you listen to that? Then it's like, holy shit, yes. You know what I mean? Like, great. And you go to the top of the list. I recommend to reps, for instance, like cold call your manager at off hours, right? Leave your manager a voicemail as if they were a prospect. And then at the end of that voicemail, say, hey, boss, tomorrow morning when you come in, could you tell me what you thought of that voicemail and let me know if you would have even responded to it, that type of thing, right? Those type of things go a long way to help managers help you, right?
Yeah, I think it's going back, as you fired a lot of points off there. I don't want to be a fire starter here, but there's a total myth, like don't have time to coach, don't have time to do this, especially if you're a frontline kind of operational and tactical manager. Historically, it's just not been easy to do it. Now it's easy to do it. There's lots of tools out there like ours that can enable teams to be better at coaching, more efficient with their time. So it's about what you prioritize in your day. Everyone has a massive to-do list. So, if you're a manager, it's like, how much do you want to help your team, and what are you going to do to do that? But in terms of like the bigger picture, in terms of like how the team work together, I do honestly believe that there's got to be the breakdown of mentality that I don't know, we speak to a lot of people, right? So I don't know, what's the ratio? Sometimes we see 14-1, sometimes we see 10-1, sometimes we see 8 or 9-1. What's the optimum number you should manage? I think it's like you should have 4 or 5 direct reports.
I think like 10's the max or something like that. Where it's like 6, like 5 to 6 is the optimal spot.
Yeah. So for me, that is just fundamentally a broken model, right? Because anyway, even with 6, it's hard to do. So like I say, the key is you have to create a culture where everyone's winning together. So if you've got aspiring AEs who want to make that next step into management and they're thinking about what type of manager they want to be in the future, it's all about being that open manager that lets the team work together and make mistakes, and you foster that culture where they can tell each other what's happening, that they could invite each other to a call and not be shy to do that, where it doesn't always have to revolve around John giving the feedback or John saying X, that anyone feels that they can speak up and, contribute. So I think that's the key, really. There's definitely a mindset in terms of like everyone just goes to the direct report, whereas it's up to the direct report to make that shift. And that's really where it needs to change.
Yeah. And you had said something earlier that was interesting, where what's that line between letting somebody fail and doing it for them, right? And that's always been a challenge for me, which is, there's sometimes where I listen in on calls and I'm like, I literally have to pull my earbuds out and be like, oh my God. Like sometimes when you watch a movie and it's like a train wreck and you just can't watch it. Like that's sometimes me listening to calls because I'm like, oh no, you missed it. It's right there. Or when I see somebody doing a presentation, right? If I think, or a sales call, and this is for any manager out there and for any rep, like if you don't put structure to a sales call, for instance, right? So say if you don't sit down with your manager before a sales call and say, all right, boss, here's the agenda. Here are my goals for the meeting. Here's how I'm going to set the stage. Then I want you to do this. And that, like, if you don't go in with a game plan when you bring your manager in, inevitably the manager is going to take over the conversation real fast. And I find myself doing that a lot, right? Where I'll have like Morgan will bring me on a call as really just to say hi and that type of stuff. And 5 minutes into the call, I can tell there's really not a lot of structure to it, or, it's kind of and I'll be like, okay, anyways. And now it's my show, right? Which isn't good, right? Because I'm taking over. I'm not letting him go as far down that path, because I'm afraid we're going to lose this if I don't pull it back, right? So how do you know as a manager, like how far to let your team members go on the failure side versus, shit, I got to jump in right now and fix that because it's an issue?
Yeah. I mean, personally as well, historically, I used to suck at that, man. It's really bad, where I just want to like jump in and save the day. And, sales is one of the hardest jobs in any business. It's a pressured environment. You got to deliver the number. Everyone feels the pressure of that. You're totally exposed, like no other department is. Yeah, you're held accountable for those numbers. So, it creates that behavior of not wanting to fail. But I'm even learning this now, like as a founder of a company, which is a new experience for me. I was sitting in, being a VP, looking at all the other departments, thinking my former CEO is a very good friend of mine, and thinking, oh, we could do this better, could do that better. And now I'm in the hot seat. I'm like, oh my God, I see everything. And it's totally different. So it's a really, really difficult thing to do. But I think, like sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward, and it's really hard. So you're like, okay, I'll give you a really good example when we were talking about me not transitioning well from being a player coach to a VP. I should have really at the time go, do you know what? We're probably not going to do as much revenue for 3 to 4 months. But in 6 months' time, it's going to fly, and it won't be the Tom show, and it won't be dependent on that, right? But it takes, you got to be brave to do that. You got to have experience to do that. It's a hard thing. But I think now the same thing is, I might listen to a call, and that's why I think live coaching is really important, because you do hear different things in the moment, and you can guide people, because the opportunity is still not lost. You can be there supporting kind of in the moment, as well as, retrospectively when it's kind of gone or you've lost the opportunity. But I think you've got to sometimes just go, right, oh shit, we're going to lose that deal. I know we're going to lose that deal. Yeah. I want it to happen. Yeah. But, I've got to let, like, I don't know, like Jerry's our new VP of sales, has been in business 6 months. I'll be on calls. I know that I just got to let Jerry have his head. He's got his own way of doing things. And then we can have the conversation after and work it through. But yeah, it's that thing about just, you've got to let go of that deal. And that is a really hard thing to do, because I had to learn the hard way to do it as well.
You said something about live coaching, like, in the moment, right? So I'm on the call, you're listening in. How do you do that without fucking somebody up? So, and I say that because, like, if I'm on a call with a client, right, and I'm doing my thing, I'm asking my questions, I'm giving my pitch, and I got somebody chirping in my ear or next to me being like, no, say this, do that, instead do this, right? It literally ruins my flow. It ruins my talk track, and it's noticeable, right? So what are some ways that you can do live coaching without screwing up the flow of the person that you were trying to coach in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to product push or anything like that, right. But like when we built Jiminny, we did a lot of due diligence market research, because we knew a lot of the answers, but we never, when we did interviews and surveys, no one liked call whispering. No one likes their being in their ear whispered in. So we kind of reinvented the wheel and did it all through chat. And there was kind of two reasons for that. One, it's an integrated way. It's a lot calmer. It's a lot subtle. You can take the written words in a different pace, right, at the right time. And also you've got a history of record of those notes. So you could live coach Morgan, and you might just let him flow through the whole call, and then you drop him a note and say, hey, all those coaching notes, they're just in the task in HubSpot and Salesforce. There's a few things, I'll give you a buzz later and we can chat about them. So you get the best of both worlds. So I think there's definitely a new way where you can, use, like you were talking to, I know DC and David at Drift, and we're all talking about how chat and real-time messaging is so important, and how things like Drift and Slack have blown up. So using chat to coach is a much more effective way, in my opinion.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I think that's the struggle. It's like, okay, great point, but that's probably a point that could have been made after the fact as a post-coaching moment, versus, my desire to jump in on that conversation and say, no, don't say that, say this, like that's going to screw up their flow, and it's going to be noticeable. So I think chat's probably
that's a really interesting thing you say that, because it's a learned behavior, right? Because the thing is, when you're live coaching in chat, will be to this like chat everything, right? And that would then just have the same effect as like jumping in their ear and whisper, or shoving, that classic thing of putting post-its on you, say this, and people are like flapping and they're sweating already. We've all been there on our first meetings, our first calls. So I think, sometimes it might be really subtle, like you could put an emoji in and like give them the thumbs up. Like, oh, you're doing awesome. And again, it's just like, if you're analyzing a recording and picking out that one game-changing thing, it's like, you don't have to overdo it. Sometimes it's about building confidence and all the other things that you do in those coaching sessions. But I think it's tendency just to like chat loads of things and like spill it all out. But you could just think, you could write them all down and then decide which ones you want to send after, right? You don't have to pick them all in the moment. Yeah,
I think that's it's like you said, it's one of the most important. It's one of the most important things a manager can do, but it's unfortunately one of the most underserviced areas that we do is direct coaching, not just managing and career development, but it's in the moment coaching, because that's when the real learning happens, right? I mean, one of my favorite tips to give to people when they do call blitzes, for instance, is to get in a room, grab 4 people, get into a room with a speakerphone and do round robin dials on the speakerphone. because the amount of learning that happens in that environment is far beyond what any trainer could ever bring to the table, because you're literally listening to, right? And so that person's in the moment, they're making that phone call, and then afterwards, collectively, the 3 or 4 people that are in there, hey, how'd that go? How could we have done that better? And then they applied that discussion to the next call. So the next person makes the call and learns from the first one. And in a real short period of time, you know, you see confidence, you see skill sets go up exponentially compared to anybody standing up and doing a presentation on how to make a cold call.
Yeah, and I think there's different data points as well, and it comes to using the team and the data that you have to, like, why do I want to be on that call?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I be on that call? Why should I listen to this call? And these are the problems that we've been solving for customers and looking at. That's both in terms of live coaching, right? So you could Slack people into conversations or be able to, like, follow a certain opportunity or a certain account. So when they spin up another meeting with Pepsi, you know you want to be on it, and it's going to tell you to go and be on it, right? So is that efficient and effective use of time? Because time's everyone's biggest commodity, right? And if you can give it back to people, that's the best.
Ultimately, that's what we're all selling. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to solve pain. We're trying to, you know, paint a vision for people. But at the end of the day, time is the commodity that we're all trading in here. Mm-hmm. So you get me to do something faster. I mean, I always tell people the way you can add value to me is take that hour-long bullshit meeting that we have to spend 15 minutes, you know, rapport building, and then the last half, you know, figuring stuff out, and cut that down to 15 to 20 minutes. And just get to the damn point. Like, if you do that as a sales rep, I don't care what you're selling. If I have 5 meetings with vendors, 4 of them are hour-long bullshit, you know, basic meetings, and one of them's 20 minutes, you're in a better light for me than anybody, regardless of what your product does, for crying out loud. So that to me is adding value to our relationship. And so back, especially as a manager, right? If you can give me time back as a manager while making me more effective, you know, all of a sudden we got something to work with here. So,
yeah, I think we noticed loads of stuff over the last 2 years, like doing lots of integrations, working with Slack, G Suite, Office, just how much time, like, I think it's like the average person uses like 34 apps, more hours than there are in the day. Jesus. Right? So, how can you consolidate what the team are doing so they can have effective use of time? Everyone knows that people are spending too much time doing admin versus actually, you know, speaking to customers, solving problems, doing those things. You know, the time of it, like, even when you listen back and we're talking about self-coaching, that every business is different and everyone's product's unique, but even learning what your optimal time is for your cold call or your discovery call, because there isn't a set rule, right? Depending on what it is. And I think that's a really important thing. Like, if you're starting a business or you're just selling or you're founding, you know, you'll have all sorts of different listeners solving different problems, but, you know, finding like that optimal time for your meeting or your pitch based on your ICP and your customer is a really important thing. I saw a customer last year and they were like doing demos that were like over an hour, and they cut it back by 20 minutes. And, you know, 6 months later, they had their best ever quarter. But you have to understand, you know, what works for you.
Yeah. I think that's like going back to your point of just picking one thing to focus on as an individual or as a team to say, hey, let's hammer down on this one thing so that we can all get really good at that, and then analyze the results to see the difference that it makes, right? The whole split system, different approaches, everything else. So
some of the best coaching practices I've seen, because everyone adopts them differently. You know, like, stand-ups, which I'm sure you talk about, you know, in the morning, come in, you know, have yourselves kind of stand up. So if people have time back, like whether you're operational tactical manager, you spend everyone probably stays in the office an hour too late or an hour too long, or you waste an hour doing other things, Instagram, Facebook, right? So end of the day, you spend 20, 30 minutes listening to an interesting conversation that your team sent you. Then you use that in the stand up in the morning, so that you're breaking down coaching into bite-sized chunks, but you're making it daily as well. Yeah. So those individual examples can be used, whether it's I've seen people do it in a one-on-one, like, I'm going to spend 10 minutes coaching all 5 of 6 of you, you know, back to back. And that's what I prepared in the last hour of my day. Some people execute it that way. Some people just kick off every morning, you know, coffees, donuts, you know, kind of like, let's just do a stand up, listen to one example of one part of a call. And it's that thing about weaving it into the culture. So it's not just, oh, we do this sometimes. And again, it's like anything, it's structure to the day, to the week, to the month, you know, of carving out that time to do it.
Yeah. Putting it on your calendar too, right? Like owning it, not being it. You know, my thing is if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. So if it's on my calendar, it has a chance. And so just having some repeatable process that you go through where it's structured every day or every week or something, where you section out that time to say that I'm going to treat this like a meeting with a client. I'm not going to reschedule it. I'm not going to push it. Like, this is a priority for me. And I think that right now, for instance, at the end of this year, going into next year, I think a lot of managers need to take a look back. And I am, like, as far as my goals, a big goal for me is to do a better job at coaching consistently. Not just looking at deals, not just, you know, jumping in whenever there's a problem, but actually proactively looking at the skills that need to be developed on my team and doing something about it. So, you know, from a goal setting standpoint, that's one of the things I think everybody should improve upon.
You got to live and die by your calendar. My wife goes nuts at me because I live and die by my calendar so much that I put her due date in the calendar for our third child, and she was like, "Are you for real? You're telling me that I'm having a baby that day?" I was like, "If I don't put it in, I'm going to book a meeting." So I was like,
exactly right.
That's probably taking it to the extreme, but.
I do the same thing. I tell my, like, because I could have the same, like, in the morning, I could have a conversation with my wife about, we're going out to dinner tonight with, you know, our friends and blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, hey, yeah, sure. And then the end of the day comes, and if it's not on my calendar, I'll still be working away. And she'll be like, are you ready to go out to dinner? I'll be like, for what? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, we just talked this morning. I'm like, if it's not on my calendar, honey, it doesn't happen. So now she sends me invites for pretty much everything, you know, dinner, like go pick up the groceries, you know, pick the kid up, like, and shit happens. So, so I think we'll end there. You know, I think we could have a conversation here for a long time because, you know, coaching there's so many nuances to it. But just in the interest of time, let's talk about, Tom, you know, moving into next year, what you're focused on and where people can find out more information about you and Jiminny, so that they can follow what you're doing. Because I think what you're doing is really important for the next evolution of where sales is going here. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, you know, to come find us, obviously you can just go to Jiminny, and that's JIMINNY. People like to spell it in all sorts of different ways. Yeah. But if you search it, you'll find it easily. I think for us, it's, you know, everyone's on a mission to show people where they should listen, where they should coach. And, you know, that's a big focus for us, using all the data that we have to really show our customers where they can spend their time effectively. You know, that's really kind of the big goal in terms of like our product and what we're kind of looking to do on that front. But yeah, you can just find us at jiminny.com, or you can reach out to any of the team on LinkedIn, and we'd always be happy to chat anytime.
Awesome. All right, Tom. Well, I appreciate the time here. And hopefully everybody, if you're an individual contributor out there, you know, proactively go and ask for coaching, but do it in the right way. Don't just say, I need coaching. Be specific with what you're asking for. If you're a manager out there, make it a goal in 2019 to be more proactive and structured with your coaching, because it matters. And if you can, you know, invest in tools like Jiminny and those type of things, all the better. So with that, thanks again, Tom, and everybody, make it a great day. End the year on a positive note. Go out there, make somebody happy, right? We need more positivity in this world. So let's go make it happen. All right.
Cheers, John. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.